Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, 7:08 p.m. Central. We got Dr. Richard Allen Miller here with us. Our co-host is Jay McNicholas. We're moshing with the apocalypse. And I'm in Florida. And he's in Pennsylvania. Where you at, Richard? Where you at, Richard?
I'm here. What's happening?
Oh, I was just asking about the state. I'm saying I'm in Florida. Jay's in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Yep.
You're in Pennsylvania? Who's in Pennsylvania?
Jay.
I used to race my sports car around the Brandywine, and I went to Princeton for a while.
Cool.
I was at the University of Delaware. That's where old man DuPont stuck me when he first met me. He came and visited my mom and dad when I was 15 and a half, and that's when I started working for Navy intelligence. I did code for NASA, 1960. I did Fortran and Ingall, COBOL, machine, you call it. There was Captain Crunch, Michael James Reconasuccio, and moi.
Awesome. Well, this is year 14 of the radio show. And just to let Richard know, I wanted to tell him just shortly why we made this show. When I was 17, I had testicular cancer. I had to go through chemo, lost one in the war, and then I'm fine now, sort of, whatever, if you want to call that fine, whatever now is. But then a few years later, after my dad passed away, I started to have UFO and weird experiences and paranormal. I would see craft over my home. I saw some beams of light leave my home, sober and while under other states of consciousness with friends and witnesses. And at one point, even a weird helicopter came out that made no noise. And I don't know if that was government or what, but no one ever talked to me face to face or anything. But that was one weird encounter, seems like some kind of agency came out. But since then, everywhere I've moved, I've seen weird UFO stuff. And a lot of people think it's just from that suffering of losing a testicle and going through all that maybe opened my senses. And I've seen some different sorts of beings as well. So also an admirer of the X-Files. And I definitely wanted to hear that X-Files story. What the connection is with you in that on some level, is he really based off you? That's the Mulder's based on you.
Well, back then, Bernard Shercliffe had been editor of Time Warner and Mad Magazine, and he retired to Grants Pass, Oregon. We met each other. He lived out of Merlin, quiet life, and he came out of retirement and taught me how to write screenplays, and I did some workups for Fox, and they bought it. They liked it, the X-Files, but they didn't like the amount of people I had. I had 12 of us because that's what my team was like, 8, 12. They were worried it wasn't going to go very well, so they cut the budget down to 2 individuals. And when I refused to move to Hollywood, they brought in Carter. I'd already done a tour with Swingers. I've been there, done that. I'm doing something else. And that's what Hollywood is about. It's creepy. It's like leveraging with L. Ron Hubbard. They'll get something on you, and then they have control. And usually it's around sex and your gonads or lower chakras. I was unimpressed with Hollywood. Most of the people I met didn't even get a clue what I was. But that's because I'm moving at a little faster pace. My first actual experience with psychedelics was in 1964 when Harvard selected 10 kids to see what would happen if they gave them LSD. That was during the studies when it was still legal. I remember I was up at Deception. I was a junior in college. Actually, I was a freshman, sophomore in college. I was 20 years old, and Larry came in, talked to my mom, and then he went to Pullman, where I was doing my undergraduate work, talked to Professor Riggins, because nobody had heard of any of this, including Albert Hoffman's studies or any of that. I remember I was at Deception Pass. You have no idea. I was looking down 2,000 feet, the water's peeling back colors, and Larry leaned over and he said, "Wouldn't it be neat to jump?" Yeah, and those that grin and laugh understand the doors of perception and all the doors that slam shut in my mind, not wanting to think that, not wanting to go there. And that was that moment that I realized that space, inner space, was even more vast than outer space. And it was at that point I went into solid state physics rather than astrophysics. Now, 50, 60 years later, here I am. I'm still deployed as a GS-18. Do you know anybody with that level of rank?
Mm-mm.
Usually 14, they've been 20 years. I have been 60 years with Navy intelligence. Imagine what I do now. Matt Stein was my partner, and we were doing urban survival skills and sustainable lifeboat workshops. There's one on my website you can subscribe to on the work we did. Mostly it was military that attended. It was 2 days. Matt is dead now. He got killed climbing El Capitan. He was dead before he hit the ground with an aortic aneurysm. He was always the healthy one and had an aneurysm that popped and was dead, just like that. For me, I guess I'm still last man standing. I did a bunch of things for the military, including putting the SEAL Corp. That's a book out, SEAL Corp. The SEAL reports, there's 12 of them. I did with SEAL Corp out of Amherst as a Blackwater before it became Navy. I did the first 3 teams in terms of selecting and training them. And that's what started the legend, and that's what the Power Tools series is about, ending with the Non-Local Mind book. There's a 5-book series in that. There will be 2 more workbooks that haven't been completed yet, but they're mostly around children. The first is how to set up aquaculture in your home, and the other one will be taking a bus. Michael Moore is going to film it. We're going to take an old school bus from Steve Miller's place. Steve is my cousin, by the way. I used to drum for him before I went to college, and he then went out and got a real drummer and became.
You mean Michael Moore, the filmmaker, the dude with glasses? I like him. The guy, the little dude with glasses and everything from Canada, isn't he?
There you go. All of them with mirrors. It's the Caterpillar is an old bus that's been retired. It did the Monarch Butterfly to grade school kids. They would go into first graders and show them about the monarch butterfly and how it migrates. I'm going to strip all that nonsense out and make it a mobile water testing laboratory run by 3rd graders, teaching 1st graders how to test for mobility and turbidity in water, because once they have water and food together, those kids are never going to have a problem with what's about to happen. Mexico right now is in riot, and California weather, with all the fires on the Klamath River and all that, are all arson. Why is that? They're out there trying to limit our food production so that food prices are going to go up this winter, big time. And Mexico, I have no idea how that's all going to play. The government can't even control the border towns now. They're all in riot. You can read about that if you want to. I don't have an answer, and it doesn't mean I'm right. I just am a physicist, and just so you understand, physics is not the absolute end of all of it, because in fact, that's why you have 2 brains, science and religion. And you got Malcoma in the middle. It's physics would be like me saying, you can go halfway to the door. Simon says you can go halfway to the door. You can get close, but by protocol, we start with assumed truths, and we're limited by our concept of space and time or information. That's what the holographic universe was about, was the way information folds down into or out of itself as opposed to space-time. None of them are accurate. They all have an uncertainty principle, Heisenberg. And the more you know about one thing, the less you know about the other. You can't get there from here. And that's important to remember. And the last chapter in my holographic concept is the mind's eye. Once you see it in your mind's eye, that is what makes it real. The first equations on the multiverse that I'm writing right now with Kaufman using Kaufman's math. I'm using a virtual form of knot theory. And my first studies indicate that consciousness is not as much real as some of the dream states, like lucid dreaming, has less content to reality. And that we are hallucinating so badly that when you're talking to me, I'm basically you talking to yourself, only I made a different decision on what to do for breakfast this morning.
Trippy.
Well,
For sure.
it's we don't have a clue. And we're limited in that sense. And from that point of view, I would say it's not humans anymore that are manipulating. They're being manipulated, money, greed. How did Gecko put it? Greed is good.
Yes.
It's basically, I could make an argument as a metaphor that, like Cro-Magnons and Neanderthal, humans are being rotated out of the petri dish, and now it's going to be filled with GMO. The spike protein is the part that's the real problem there. The amount of doctors that were pro-jab that are now dead is unbelievable. And to realize that different hospitals were actually being paid $10,000 for every death that could be associated to COVID back 19. Even our human children have been damaged because they were not allowed to go to school to develop their immune systems properly. I remember when my mother sent me to school to get mumps, measles, things of that nature. And people like me that are older than you, what we were required in school, it was considerably different than you. And this bullshit of leaving those children behind. And now we're having 2 languages, bilingual. When I studied those languages, it was called Esperanto because I did Tagalog, which is a different form of Spanish. I grew up in the Philippines. That's where I learned my martial arts. And so it's something else is going on here. And what it is, I know that I probably will never really know what happened. I'm just along for the ride. That's why we don't have free will. Free will would imply full disclosure. What we have is true will. What we do know based on who we truly are. And we've got lots of different versions in the multiverse. How many decisions did you make just today? That each one changes the entire outcome of the entire rest of everybody.
Wow. Definitely. And one of my big experiences, we're seeing like energy beings many times with my naked eyes. And I know shamans call them luminous beings of light, but I kind of think that's what we are, maybe on some level. That's kind of what we are.
I have a screenplay I'll send to you called The Magical Child, Childe.
Okay.
A child is born. It isn't until chapter 4 that you discover that the child's not human. It's a light body. Needs a golem to inhabit, and discovers in chapter 6 that there's an entity on Earth that's dying. It's called the Van Allen belt. And when the Van Allen belt collapses, the Earth goes through its so-called trial by fire, Tapia. And then it's an interesting story about how it becomes the Antichrist, the magical child.
Things definitely seem
that was something I wrote, by the way, before I wrote X-Files.
Cool. That sounds interesting for sure. Well, things seem crazy as hell right now on so many levels with everything that's going on, from politics to Putin to everything. I mean, it seems like we're on the verge of freaking Ragnarok.
Did you know that I have a handler from Putin?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I have a handler from a number of countries because I'm considered an asset. I'm so good an asset that I pick and choose what I want to do. I do not take orders. I never did.
Yeah,
that's right. That's why they have a handler. I'm like a little brat kid. I'm not doing it. I have moral codes of ethics and rules of conduct. How did Ducky Mallard put it? An ethical man knows not to cheat on his wife. A moral man won't. When you walk your talk, that's what Batman meant when he said it's not who you are, but what you do. that defines who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have rules of conduct, things that I believe in. Right now, I'm being used by two warring government actions. Believe it or not, they're at war with themselves, trust me. And one of them figures I'm too old to be important anymore, so it doesn't matter what happens to me. The other one does know what I am, keeps me on a short leash. The only place you can legitimately get my writings is from me directly. Anywhere else, Amazon, Ingram, with all of those are all compromised, and I have people publishing my work without permission on Amazon. It's been going on since 2016 when CreateSpace first started, when Lightning Source changed over. I got as high as corporate with Lightning Source, and rather than who else is publishing my works, he said, rather than answer your question, Dr. Miller, I'm going to fire you.
Wow. So what can you tell us about the alien UFO stuff that you've come across? I'm sure you've come across a lot, so you know a lot about it. But is our government really working with these things? You see so many things about Truman.
You mean they're men in black?
Yeah. And I mean, are they really working with aliens, or is that just BS from exopolitics?
I'm going to need you to look at this for one moment, please.
He's hypnotizing us. Run. Yeah.
I'm just messing with you.
Run.
Of course there are. How could they not be real?
Oh, I believe they're real.
If imagination is real, and you're just a little tiny brat kid without any clue, and you can conceive of that, it's not only true, it's even more than that. One of the studies I did for the military back in the early 70s was to research other life forms that intercropped with human beings. The Dalai Lama, is he human?
No.
How does a child
I like him.
say to the elders, that's not the hat I wore, that's the hat I wore? How do they do that?
They know from their spirit.
Okay, how does a woman rip a car door off to save her daughter in a flaming automobile? The adrenaline did not make her body, muscle, and bones stronger than steel. How did she do that?
Super consciousness, the alien side, the superhero
Well,
side.
that's a slough off. I want some physics behind that. And, you know, when you start to do these kinds of things, there's not many places you can go, and when you start to isolate variables like I did with psi energy, I did that. My mentor, Stan Krippner, brought me to New York City in 1970. Energies of Consciousness is what you'll see that book out, Gordon and Breach. That's where I met Ed Mitchell, so that I could be at Mission Control in 1971 to do the ESP studies, thinking with the gut instinct. Now, when you come from that place, you do not, by definition, make mistakes. When you start to think about something and you create the possibilities of getting shot, not getting shot, getting wounded, all these different things, you can count on it. That was Merlin when he said to Arthur in a book by T.H. White, anything not specifically forbidden is mandatory. If it's possible, you can count on it. And your imagination is just the first door of many doors into the multiverse. Altered states of consciousness are not about drugs. It turns out, I did 3 books that are coming out. You can post that at the Diamond Body. Did you get that little Diamond Body, Electro Magic, and Yogatronic? The Diamond Body was when I moved the Manager Foundation out of Topeka, Kansas to the University of Washington in 1974. Nice try, I saw that vape. Under the breath. Yeah, blow it out now.
Is that Jay or me? I haven't done it in a while.
Jay did something under his mouth. I don't know if it's a cigarette or it's a vapor. Look at him. I discovered cymatics and how sound and light, those bandwidths, affect physical organs. In 1979, I then, taking that concept, I used Mora and Indomet, German acupuncture equipment, on the top of the forehead, where I talked directly to neurotransmitters and getting their release. The drug, like mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms. I wrote, by the way, the first psychedelic mushroom book for High Times. Cool. You can get it on my website, Magical Mushroom Handbook. Awesome. Biocystin, psilocin, all of these different chemistries that are in psychedelic mushrooms, they say in medicine are good for you, is why medicine is broken. Because basically they're toxins, but they have a chemistry, like crabgrass is dimethyltryptamine. They have chemistries that are very similar to, but different than the neurotransmitter. And it's your immune system that gives you access to these altered states. In their release, when your immune system kicks in and releases lysergic acid amide. Now, these highs, okay, Leary, in his book, The Varieties of Psychedelic Experience, his Bordeaux-Thedol book, you will find, he says in there, quote, the Buddhists have 4 reasons for getting high, and only one of them is for escape and recreation. What are the other 3 reasons for getting high? And that's where you might start your process rather than from escape point of view. This allows you to go into other universes where you can do things and the laws are different than they are in conscious state. And what made you God's favored was choice.
And I know you had sent me some information about Jim Morrison. That was one of the bands that I came across. Let me explain you. Right now, the only drug I do is weed, and it's legal in Florida. You have to pay a crap load to get the medicinal stuff, and we get that. But and I'm working on a nicotine vape. I'm going to be alone for a week. I'm quitting it. I've quit it before, so it shouldn't be a problem. But,
you really should explore self-hypnosis. You can do it yourself. It's really simple once you believe in yourself. And that is a very powerful tool because that will be the one you use to go to different altered states.
I'll look into it more for sure.
Please, talk to your doctor about it. A hypnotherapist, a good one. Probably someone from Gil Boyne Schools, the American Council of Hypnotic Examiners. I'm a hypnotherapist. That was one of the things I collected a little honorary degree so that I could understand more what's really going on with hypnosis. It is a very powerful tool that you can overcome all kinds of things from migraine headaches to allergies. I taught my fields how to do that.
And then the only other thing I do is some psychedelics once in a while if I come across it. It's not always the easiest.
You can create that same high, and that's a book called Electromagic on how to do it without the drug. And then in 1983, the third book I did was called Yogatronics, where you use sacred geometry and set up resonant cavity oscillation to dialogue with other subtle bodies outside the physical body, and you can go anywhere you want to because traveling in space isn't going to happen.
Yeah. I'll definitely check it out. I'll check it out. One of the here basically what happened with me, my dad he's dead now. He passed away from a heart attack a long time ago, but he told me when I was younger, if I ever did drugs, he'd kill me, and I believed him. So when he died, I went crazy. I became a dealer for a few years. I was a complete idiot. That's when I did drugs. But I came across the
diary during that period. Did you write about your experiences?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to recommend you go back and begin reading those now. This is a secret language that you will develop between you and yourself and other bodies out there, what you call the multiverse, the different Doctor Stranges, the one with the third eye, the one with...
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I wrote a lot of poems and stuff like that. That's when I came across the Doors. So I've always loved the Doors. There's just been something there for sure. The shamanic for sure.
A shaman is a low-level psychic that he gets a call to the religious life, and what they usually do is this is Trance, Art, and Creativity by, oh, Jesus, what's his name? At Northridge.
Terrence McKenna?
No, McKenna's. No.
Oh, he did too many drugs, and that's why he died, I think.
Yeah, I tried to do it. I was writing for Rolling Stone way back when, and McKenna was afraid to come to the door when I was going to do an interview with him with Rolling Stone. And he's not, and his 0 point energy concept, by the way, is Gaia, singing at the end of the rainbow. In the Upanishads, they call it the Shabad, Shabd, or the voice of the silence, the lost chord. You hear it in your right ear, and as you get older, you hear music. And what that is the mycelium in the mycorrhiza that is setting at a certain bandwidth, and you don't hear it externally because it's in the microwave band, like 0.3 to 3 gigahertz, like synthetic telepathy. You hear it inside your head. And they call it voice of the silence or the lost chord. But what that is the mycelium is the nervous system of Gaia. And it's actually has a noise that you can hear. There's a woman at the University of British Columbia that writes about that right now in forestry, where the mother tree communicates an impending forest fire or a drought or a storm impending to caution the younger trees for preparation. And that's called a precursor wave in solid state physics, an event horizon which happens before the event. Boo. That's how that works. I mean, I'm going to open your mind to some things here. Everything is alive. There is a Romanian scientist that just discovered an aluminum life form, not carbon-based, but aluminum-based in your jab. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. You see, there are some things going on here that I don't quite yet know what to make of, but I could suggest there's a lot more going on than New World Order and some China trying to claim California as new landmass. By the way, that is what's going to happen. Eventually, Biden wanted to do that right out of the gate, and they wouldn't let him. That's why Mexico's in riot right now, and the food production out of California and Mexico is going to quadruple before Christmas.
Because China is going to do what to California? Take it?
Yeah, they want that piece of property.
Well, they definitely are acting crazy as hell right now, for sure.
Well, watch. Mark my words. I have a history of telling people what I think is going to happen. I don't know, but I'm real good at what I do know. And what I do know is, never mind. I have seen things that I have no clue what it means. I have actually met. Okay, I'll tell you this one. Here's one study I did. In Ostrander and Schroeder's Psychic Discoveries, they talk about the lunar sex cycle of the female. That's Janif's work, where when a woman is born, an engram is set into her DNA on when she ovulates. And if she moves to a different part of the earth, that phase angle changes, which means her ovulation changes, which means you have a form of birth control. Now, they had a second one because this is cosmobiology, where astronomy then becomes the geometry of celestial bodies. When the planet Uranus and the Earth and the Sun are in a specific geometric alignment, there is a 3 sigma error coefficient, a 99.9975% probability of the event occurring. And that orb started last year. It's a 5-year orb. And the reason they did the Parker dive into the heliosphere was to determine the actual moment when it happens, because it's set off by the solar minimums that are different. And that now looks to be late March, early April of 2024. That volcano off of Crescent City for the West Coast is going to go off, and the plate is going to shift about 5 degrees. When it does, everything from I-5 west is gone in a heartbeat. Florida will be underwater. I don't know, if Atlantis is going to show its ugly face out there in the Bermuda Triangle, but that's what I did. One of the studies I did, I'm tangenting, but this is important, was the Oregon Vortex, where light bends. And I took a PBY with a interferometer and was measuring something bending light at 20,000 feet. What would bend light at 20,000 feet that we know of in physics? A mini black hole. A mini black hole. And all around the so-called ley lines were lines of direction where the next black hole lines, like the Bermuda Triangle and off of India, where you'll find, never mind, I'll talk about that later sometime. India, there's some very strange points on Earth that have anomalies that we don't understand. And older technologies, before we got into our current epoch, used these as ley lines for all the bars are in that direction, and all the churches are in that direction. And they aligned all their different buildings and facilities based on ley lines. And, your Stonehenge and all the rest of it. Mayans had some of that. Anyway, what I was going to say is when this event occurs, the plate is going to shift just slightly, about 5 degrees. And that's going to cause geographic changes where there will be large bodies of life of individuals not prepared with water and food. And that's why Matt and I were doing sustainable lifeboats with oars. And each region in the United States has its own pluses and minuses. In Arapahoe, Arizona, we have an old Nike missile silo that has 60 feet of vertical aquaculture run by 3 families. It's a closed system going to Alpha Centauri. It can feed 4,000 people in a closed system. All their inorganic salts come from 1/3 chicken manure, 1/3 rabbit manure, and 1/3 worm casing. And that's the studies at Boeing with Lunar Base Alpha 1 that I did when I came out of grad school in 1968. Interesting stuff. Where do you want to go?
Well, first off, I want to say I'm in Florida, but I'm up top near Alabama and Georgia, like right on the line. Will I still die? Hopefully not. Probably.
Wonderful. I've got other things down there too, besides Florida.
Yeah. Florida sucks. Luckily, we get cold weather here, a little 20s and 30s, which I like better than this shit right now that's happening. It feels terrible. But let's get into Jim Moore. Oh, go ahead.
Have you ever been to a Homestead?
No. What is that?
Where they had the big the hurricanes that hit that?
I know, yeah.
Okay, that was a project I did with FDA. FDA uses me as an advisor because I know chemistry better than anybody. I took quantum biochemistry from Albert Senskorky at MIT as a physics course.
Cool.
So I'm a pretty good cook, how to titrate out dimethyltryptamine out of crabgrass. The thing is, see, like crabgrass, what you're doing when you do dimethyltryptamine is 5-alpha, something that Steve Blake did. You smoke in a little glass pipe and off you go. But the high is actually produced by N, N hyphen dimethyltryptamine, which opens a door, your third eye, your pineal gland, opens a door to microtubules outside the physical body. That's one of a bunch of subtle bodies outside the physical that they're only just now starting to describe. I have chapter 7 covers that, called Time Travel and the True Nature of Cavitation. If you're interested in cavitation processes, Mark Leclerc's work at MIT is worth the beginning stages in that area. But cavitation is like when a drop of water falls and hits a pool of water, a bunch of things happen. First, the drop of water, because of the weight of it, goes into the pool before it poops back out. When it poops back out, it is no longer a drop of water. What it is structured water bubble containing the environment it fell in, air. And if you look at the air, That's a cavitation process, which Alan Dean Foster wrote a sci-fi book called Into the Out of. And, you know, he also did Star Wars, but he wrote a book called Into the Out of. And that's a worthwhile read, where a bunch of witch doctors are sitting around doing their hokey pokey, probably Macumba or something, and out pops a bunch of demons out of space. How does that work? That is a rare book by the Vatican, Joseph Isaiah, called The Secret Traditions of the Yazidi. And that is up in the northern part of Iraq. And the primary reason Bush went up there was not, you know, when we said the war's over, we won on that boat with all his awards and everything. What it was is they got a hold of the first of two Stargates. And the first Stargate is historically about this gate or door where demons go in and out. And that was one of the things I studied in the northern part. It's in the caverns down below in the northern part. Yazidi are called devil worship, but they're not really devil worshiping. They're into alien, whatever. It's all interesting stuff that I don't have any way of contexting. When I met Krill, she was almost a 8.5 foot, 7.5 to 8 foot long, tall gray that had some kind of a still suit on and spoke inside my head, and I couldn't understand how that works. And that's what led Alan Frey and I to write our book about synthetic telepathy, using microwave band and heterodyning audio on that so that you can hear it inside your head. That's not what they do.
I know when I did DMT, I saw weird writing on the wall that was weird, like symbols and stuff like that. That was very strange when I did it, and I smoked it. It had been a long time, but I saw like strange writing on the wall.
Yeah. Everybody has actually had close encounters. Everybody. Very few, like you, remember them. They'll come in your dreams. You'll think it's a dream. You'll think it's a this or that. It's not. You're being visited because the Petri dish is an important experiment going on. And I feel like I'm David Copperfield. I have this empty bowl and I'm saying to the Lord, I'm still hungry for something more than just the physical plane, sir. There's something more going on here, and I want to know what it is. And you can't get there from here. I'm limited. You know, I'm inhibited by my own limitations. Cosmobiology will be where we start to look at space as celestial bodies, that the geometry has significance, like sacred geometry. And the alien technologies that we're looking at now, you know, their form of communication is like, it's emotional. It's not like our emotions. It's so clean, it's pure. And I can't explain how to explain that better other than to say, as a metaphor, that when the apocalypse occurs and the humans are extinct or rotated into the gene pool, a few of you will be offered a choice of the star of your choice if you select the right artifact to remember Earth by. What would that be?
The Grail.
How about an eagle feather? How about Michael Risey or a mushroom? How about marijuana? How about Temple Ball from Kathmandu? There you go. Yeah. Now we're talking. You know, who knows what is the correct choice? But that was one of the doors that I'm allowed to say now, that some of us will be allowed to evolve into our own concepts.
Speaking of the doors, now about Jim Morrison, is he still alive now? And what can you tell us about that?
I haven't done any research in 20 years. You'll notice that was all done back in the 90s.
Yes.
What I did is I got letters when I was working with Tom Lytle. Lytle has written about this in a book called Secret and Suppressed by Feral Press. There's a whole chapter there. There's your physical evidence that supports that article. And basically, Morrison was 10 years old when Joseph Montangwa, who is grandfather Joseph, the Hopi spokesperson before, what's his name that gave me that medicine pipe? I forget his name now.
Krippner wrote about a native dude. I can't remember his
Who?
name, but I know Stanley Krippner wrote about some native
well,
dude.
that's based on the work I did. Yeah. Who was it? There's others that did it. Joseph Montangwa with grandfather Joseph was not human. He's like a recorder, and he's a ride-along. And whoever's the nearest him when he died picks up the entity as a ride-along recorder. And that's what Jim Morrison's songs were all about, singing about, crossing over to the other side. Death is not what you think it is. It's actually waking up.
Rolling Thunder was the guy. Rolling Thunder was who I was trying to figure out. Yeah,
Rolling Thunder and Rolling Thunder the Third and Twyla, all of those ladies. My best friend was a Shuswap when I was in high school, and he wanted me to be his brother, and so I had to run the gauntlet at Potlatch to become his brother as a Sitka, and Sitka tribe out of North Vancouver Island, and he was on the first reserve up there near Salmon Arm, and I didn't run the gauntlet because I'd had all these martial arts. What I did is I let each person take their best shot at me, and only one of them kind of sort of clipped me. I was really impressed because I was pretty good. One of the protocols I trained Navy SEALs in was how to change their perception of time using breath control. When you do Tai Chi, I had a Sifu that came down out of Victoria every Wednesday and taught at Dr. Bestier's naturopathic school. I'd already had 18 years of Hung Gao with John Leong. Bruce Lee, Skip Ellsworth, Fred Williams, and I were the 4 students in the early years. And what this man did is he taught me how to change my perception of time so I had the precision of Hung Gar with Tai Chi. And basically, at that moment, I became world champion with double sword. If I had 2 swords, you couldn't take me with a bow. I could create a shield faster than
Cool.
And you couldn't get through it, and with the swords, and you can do that in slow motion where you have the precision, and that took the martial arts of the first Navy SEALs and moved it to paranormal levels. Their precision, just by controlling breath, you can watch everything in slow motion. It's an altered state that's a tool, and that's what altered states are actually about. They're tools to be used in a toolbox to make you evolve. At the moment of death, there is a literal 5-gram weight loss in the body, and it's not urine. What is it?
Gases?
It's structured water in a microtubule outside the physical body, what you call chi. I watched my Sifu could knock someone across the wall just by, not even touching them. If you watch the Cassius Clay fight with Sonny Liston, when Cassius Clay hits him with a roundhouse and knocks Sonny Liston up off his back and flat out cold, on closer inspection, you'll see that Sonny Liston wasn't even touched by Cassius Clay. Cassius Clay used his thought of hitting him, and that's what knocked Sonny Liston out. And these are paranormal things that are happening all the time around us, and we don't notice them. We presume, I missed something, or, Okay, let me give you an example. How many ants are on your property? Who's terraforming it more?
I don't know how many ants, but I know there's some down there, probably a couple million.
And who do you think's taking more control? What are you smoking? Is that another vape also?
No, I'm not smoking.
What was that you put up to your lips?
I'm just
okay. I thought you were smoking secretly like this.
No.
Sorry about that, Jay. You got mine.
I'd say the queen would be in charge.
What's that?
The queen ant would be in charge, I would think.
Yeah, which means that when you use tarot, the correct the thing is not to put them in these little Hotel Californias where they check in but they don't check out. The correct one is to give them all the food they want so they take it back to the nest and you get the queen. It's got strychnine in it. Taro, Taro. That's how you take the ants out of your kitchen in a heartbeat. Stop the queen. Because how did Jay Leno put it? Oh, don't worry, we'll make more. That was Dorito corn chips. Right. We're not going to run out of Dorito corn chips. We're not going to run out of ants. That's no problem.
Yeah.
What you want to do with sugar ants is to take out the queen. Once you take out the queen, the ants are gone. They'll come back. There'll be another queen at some point, but time. You see where I'm going with that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, now we'll do your questions about aliens. And actually, what I want you to do is do Carol Rosin. Do you know her? No, look her name up. She lives in Medford. She lives with John Cipher, the guy that played Chief Daniels in Hill Street Blues. Carol Rosin, Rosin. Secret Space Program. She worked with Von Braun. Carol Rosin. Yeah, she's retired now, getting older and grumpy, but she is extremely knowledgeable on the secret space program because she worked under Von Braun. She was one of his secretaries. Carol Rosin, Rosin. See her?
Mm-hmm. I got her.
Okay, good. And I can give you an intro if you want. She would be really good on your alien part. My area of expertise was mostly paranormal. That's why, and Carter went more toward alien, but the first 8 episodes were more about paranormal studies, and that's what I was doing. It's called PsyOps. I'll send you the original workup if you'd like, just for your historical. You can get a sense of. I had 8 with Strong Eagle and a bunch of others in there that were. To become a medicine man, I had to run the gauntlet. And then for the next 6 years, up at Shai Beach, right across from Hurricane Ridge and up in the northern part of Washington, there's up there at Tatoosh Island, there's some beaches that you have to have a BIA card on, owned by Indians. And I studied with Strong Eagle. He came in out of Victoria and met me at Shai Beach. And I would live on those beaches for 2 months at a time, learning how to survive and study all the songs and dances. That's where all those point of the arches are, and there's 2 of them up there. There's a large one and a smaller one, which is a baby whale that when the tide's going in and out, the water goes through some holes. And that's how, for example, this is Indian medicine, how the ocean got its salt was that the baby whale couldn't catch up to the mother and cried. That's Indians, you know how they are. All of the coastal tribes have their medicine. Down here in Oregon, gold digging and the gold prospecting and things, they killed most of the tribes off. There's Tananaws up in Alaska that still hold medicine. The Tanana chiefs are all the different tribes that Nick Begich's father gave the pipeline to. They murdered him because of doing that, by the way. But it belongs to the Indians. And their legends and their stories are pretty much like what the whale does to its young. It sings a song, which is their history, and it's unique with each whale. That's called medicine. That's what they call medicine. That is your history and your origins. And you usually sing it as a song. It was an oral tradition, like they did in the movie Enemy Mine. That is how you transmitted things. That's a kind of thing that isn't happening anymore like it used to be. What we have now is white truck syndrome with the Gen X's and the muscle trucks and the, or biker mentality. I'm down here living with a bunch of bikers. I've got Vagos on one side and Hell's Angels on the other with CID across the street. It's all real creepy down here. They've been at war for 4 generations. I'm one of the spokespeople trying to keep the peace between them because it's stupid. It's, revenge and, Sonny Barger just died. He has a grandson that is a mixed blood between Vagos and Hell's Angel and is possibly the thing that will bring the two biking clubs back together after 4 generations. They've been at war for a long time here in this area. I don't know if you have those kinds of things down in Florida. Where you want to go that I spent a lot of time is Key Largo. Key Largo has a place called Dolphins Plus. And if you want to have a close encounter, they will allow you to go in the tank after you go through a small study group with dolphin that have been hit by shark. And there's where you will have your first close encounter, because there are 4 cetacean that have higher bigger brain cases than man. And all 4 of them have higher technologies than man. Orca, for example, has access to 9/10 of the biosphere, where man has only access to 1/10. Who's superior? You see, it's the way you choose to look at things. And how did the old expression go? I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't have believed it. That's the problem. We anesthetize ourselves and miss the forest and the trees.
Mm-hmm. Do they also not, all the cetaceans, do they not also, all of them have a bioweapon as well?
They have all kinds of things you can't imagine. Can you imagine the Navy? When I was up in Tart's labs, they were trying to take Charles Tart and, what's his name? I forget it was, doing the dolphin studies at Berkeley. They were trying to use the dolphin as a weapon to guide missile torpedoes target. And the dolphin just started laughing. I mean, a metaphor. You don't have a clue. Man does not have a clue. And it's a shame, because even a dog, which has a smaller brain case than man, is closer to spirit. You know? You can feel it. You can sense it. And it isn't love is all there is, but that's an important one. You know, faith, hope, and love, not charity, were the original Greek translations from the Torah. And I can tell you, it isn't, faith, hope, and charity. It isn't charity, it's love. I can put it to you succinctly. Ownership is enhanced when shared with another. It's not about having something, it's about sharing it. And when you do that, that's where the value is found in something, not money. But those will be lessons that people need to. I'm a satsangi. That means I start my meditation at the third eye. I was initiated by Sharon Singh himself. And I meditate to train the mind since 1978. The mind is all over the board as a little brat kid. And you need to learn how to bring yourself into true. And what you're doing is you're taking all these different yous in the multiverse and bringing them into distinction on who you are. And once you do that, that's where a human becomes a saint. And one of the definitions of a saint is choosing the moment of your death. I can't do that, so I'm not a saint, but you understand what I'm trying to say. That's what a true saint is. Someone that didn't have to come back and is doing seva, or service to man. I'm doing that now with my writing. I have no one to give them to. I have incomes that come off of my books, and now pirates are trying to take them over, like Amazon. Amazon's terrible. They have corporate in Seattle, and then right below corporate, the black ops for hire that will target individuals that you want and mess them up, keep them on short leashes. That secondary one started out of Snohomish. And because I grew up in Seattle, I'm quite familiar with everything up there. I used to duck hunt where Microsoft was. And Bill Gates and the whole concept of food, Gates isn't even the one that did it. You ought to try Paul Ludis of Lotus Notes. Some of these other geniuses that were really smart people that I got to meet. I don't have answers, but I have seen things and have opinions on what man can do to evolve. And that's what I'm trying to do now, is write those books and leave some footprints for your grandchildren. Because I can tell you, it won't be you or me that saves mankind.
Anything you want to ask, Jay? I know you got.
Yeah,
I
I got
got
a
plenty of
question.
stuff.
Earlier, you talked about Florida being flooded. Have you seen any of the world changes maps that shows the world after a certain catastrophe with like most of America underwater? How accurate do you think those are?
They're not as accurate. You're talking about Rudolf Steiner and Edgar Casey. Edgar Casey talks about New Jerusalem, up in Seattle, which is the little island that formed where Seattle was. As a child, before they did Seattle Underground, we'd go through these manhole covers and go into the old city that was hit by earthquakes and get the furniture from 1820. Now they make tours out of it. Seattle Underground. That's down near Pioneer Square. That whole area was called Skid Row. That's where they rammed the logs into Elliott Bay and Puget Sound, the logging company. Weyerhaeuser is a whole lot better than what we've got down here in Oregon. The logger barons in Oregon are criminals beyond criminal. What they've done, our new governor opened up Spotted Owl that I helped Paul Newman set up. And I can tell you, they're logging Spotted Owl now, and it's terrible on the Applegate. There's hills that are just completely, they had a feeding frenzy. And these aren't the loggers now out of Medford. These are the bottom feeders that work under the loggers that go after firewood and other things. I saw a log truck today that had a bunch of logs in it that all were less than 6-inch diameter. That's wrong. That's like, why? Can't even make poles, so you can't make telephone poles out of them,
Yeah.
So what are they doing it for? And that down here we have serpentine soils, which means not only is there arsenic, and you have to test for the water. You can't just presume it's clean for mineral, but you can't start a tree farm off of a log forest. A forest is quite different than a tree farm. That was the whole point of the Spotted Owl thing, showing the distinction between what a forest is with mycorrhiza and mycelium and, this network of living entities in a hierarchy like your gut. Your brain is a second gut that dialogues with subtle bodies outside the physical as a metaphor. And you use your belief systems as a tool. Let me give you an example. In physics, all physics starts with an assumed truth. Shortest distance between 2 points, and the Earth's round. But if space is curved, I can, with tensor math, prove the Earth's flat. Which one is it? And the correct answer is yes, because if you choose to look at it this way, you have these doors to go through. And if you choose to look at it that way, you have those doors to look at it, to go through. And you have that choice, which means you have access to all the doors. And what you conceive of as God is what you personally are capable of achieving in this lifetime if you used your full resources. And that place is less than halfway to God. And basically, you can't know God. You can experience him because of your limitation in the ability to conceptualize what space and time are. What is time?
An invention of man.
Well, it's a duration of consciousness. It's the way you store memory. But you can change that, well, with altered states.
Yeah.
And so time and space are constructs. They're not real. They're the way man is limitedly looking at. Why do you think all the dolphins are laughing at us all the time? Thanks for all the fish. Hitchhiker's Guide. Yeah, well, I can tell you that I know that I don't know. And what I am is trying to use my physics to get close so that I can maybe catch a way to get out of the petri dish.
And so you've mentioned the petri dish a few times, and I do think we were an experiment. Do you think Do you think we were created by alien race known as the Anunnaki? And what do you think they actually created us for?
Well, I don't know about Anunnaki. I know that I studied with Gershom Scholem 6 years. I had to learn Old Hebrew and Greek before he'd even take me as a graduate student after I graduated with my doctorates in physics. I'm a Hermetic Kabbalist. This right here, my great-grandfather's. There's male and female culminating towards judgment, and of course, there's things on
What kind of stone is that?
other side that are,
Is that turquoise or lapis
yeah, that's
lazuli?
lapis. My
Lapis.
grade.
I have
That's
some
lapis.
runes. I have some runes made out of lapis lazuli. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, mine is with a Blue Lodge in Zurich called. I mentor for Zurich and the Gifted Children program. Now he's graduated. I had a 12-year-old doing his doctorate at Cornell in organic chemistry. What could I possibly do to mentor a kid like that?
I don't know. Sounds like a genius to me.
We wrote a comic book together for Dark Horse Press.
Oh,
Which
cool.
one was that? Which one's that?
Wait and see, man.
Oh,
You tell me, is it going to be Hellblazer or something more American like Constantine? Stay tuned. Film 11. Same back
The
channel.
last few
Same back
years, I
channel.
started back collecting comics, and it's a good idea in a lot of ways, but it's addictive as crap, and I'm having to treat it like cocaine now. And not
Comic
do it
books are lovely, aren't they? I just I collected comics.
Get
since the
addictive.
Yeah, because they have more than one sense involved. And when you have Jim Starlin, I did the early Doctor Strange when he was battling Dormammu.
Cool.
I'm OTO. In fact, when Grady McMurtry died, they offered me the Caliphate and I turned it down. And so Breeze took it, moved Grand Lodge from New York City 1 year before 9/11 over to Berlin. Wir wollen Deutsche bleiben. Sorry. I just automatically go into it. You remember that one? Dr. Strange. Sorry. Sorry.
I got to see the second Doctor Strange, the movie. I haven't seen it yet. I know Sam Raimi did it, the Evil Dead dude, so I need to see it.
Yeah, you want to see Doctor Strange Love.
I've seen that.
And his best movie, by the way, Peter Sellers, was Being There. The movie Being There. That has got to be the best movie all time ever. I love that movie. That was his last movie. At the end of the movie, as they're electing him president of the United States, it's like a Biden. I didn't even vote for Trump. I voted against Biden. I love my country. I hate our government. I think the only thing our government actually has ever done right was the U.S. Postal Service. There's your front lines. How would you like to be in front of that gate window with all the shit coming across from everybody every day and have a smile on your face?
Yeah.
That's tough. And Pony Express was only for 6 months. Yeah, and yet it set the tone of what communication with each other was all about. And that's one of the things that made America. How would you like to be in Canada right now? With Trudeau doing what he's doing just today.
Too cold for me up there, even this time of year.
And Australia finally woke up, New Zealand. But there's more going on out there. And I'm really, I couldn't possibly tell you what it is. I definitely sense there's something extraterrestrial involved here. None of it makes any sense. I mean, even from a money and control power point of view, I mean, there's a lot more things going on. You're looking at a lot of different screens. I'm seeing them on your glasses. That's very cool. Yeah. Where are you going, Jeff?
Oh, yeah, I got chat rooms and stuff for the show and stuff. People ask
if they would like to ask questions, I do that best. What do you want? Give me a question.
I got one guy that's got that is determined The show's Church of Mabus Radio, Mabus. I did it a long time ago in my early 20s. I was going to make a metal band called Mabus. I stopped doing drugs, so I didn't. I probably would have OD'd and died. The Nostradamus thing, Mabus, Mabus. Well, this particular guy, Eric Grinsman, thinks Trump is Mabus and has this thing called the Mabus solution, and Trump is Mabus and all this stuff, which may be so. I don't know. But I know there's different things about Obama was Mabus, Bush was Mabus. They say so much different crap about, John Hogue said Mabus was the Antichrist in a documentary in the 80s, and everybody believes that. Nobody knows what Mabus really is. But I'm just kind of curious if you ever came across anything with that word, the word Mabus.
I can do an algorithm on you and maybe come back with some interesting directions for you to look at. I haven't looked at Mabus. It reminded me of Church of Mabus.
Yeah,
Men after something happened in the U.S.
yeah. It was me basically just kind of like the guy from Evil Dead messing with something he shouldn't with. That's kind of what I did with that word, probably.
Well, you know that this is like a purgatory. That no matter how positive your values are, things still have an up and a down to them. And you want to always try to keep your glass half full rather than half empty. Attitude, your way of choosing to look at something. Mm-hmm. But there's more going on, and I'm now beginning to realize the distinctions in terms of being spiritual, walking your talk, and trying to find that center which makes you uniquely different than anyone else. And I can tell you that that's close to where most of us are going to find our way out of this petri dish. I can't tell you how to do it because I don't know how to do it, but I'm exploring that with my various books, and my expertise is in physics, but I know I don't know, and I'm considered one of the best ones there ever was, and I know I don't know. It doesn't work like that. I went from analog to digital. That's what quantum mechanics did, trying to digitize the universe with elementary particles. And now we have subatomic particles, and we have mesons and bosons and all kinds of other kinds of particles. Dark matter.
Yeah. The exotic particles, yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you quantize something, going from analog to digital, you lose something called uncertainty. That's Heisenberg, the uncertainty principle.
The Heisenberg uncertainty principle, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's second law of thermodynamics, etc. But something more happened, and that's why I originated the holographic concept of reality. And the reason I didn't get to go to Stockholm when I did that was that Gabor got to go 1 month earlier from his hologram. I met him in 1967. Yeah, it was 1967. I'm walking down the hall at the experimental research in Wilmington, and this one lab door is open, and I'm looking in it, and there's a three-dimensional color TV in 1967. Where is that in our marketplace?
Doesn't exist.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Because we have that technology. And he got a Nobel Prize for that. And then the next year when I did embryonic holography, which absolutely was going to take me to Stockholm, they classified it top secret and wasn't released until 92. 1992, Gariev and Popov both quoted from it and got nominated but did not get to go to Stockholm. And now two Russians that were working under Gariev made a breakthrough on the proton cloud in biology. This is the space between when a proton is a particle and when it becomes a wave. And that's where your multiverse lies. And all the different variations of who you could be because of all the different possible choices you could have made to be slightly different, and the earth being different, your life, etc. And what I'm doing now is trying to write a field equation because they can't do it. They're biologists. It has to do with DNA being a resonant cavity oscillator. It is a three-dimensional hologram of force space being who you were, who you are, and who you will be. You know, a metaphor.
Yeah.
5 space is another dimension beyond that. String theory has 10 dimensions and an interconnecting 11th dimension that could be seen as a wormhole. That's how I created my own wormhole using that concept in Yogatronics, which will be another one. And if you want to check this out. Google these two words together, the Mars Project, comma, and Wernicke's correction. Wernicke apostrophe S, Wernicke's correction. It is a part of the brain near the reticular activating center. And see where that takes you.
I know something I wanted to ask you about, and I've jokingly said lately that China and Russia have satellites and they're aiming at us and causing us to be more aggressive and stuff. And I don't know if that's true. I've had Robert Duncan on before, who worked for the CIA, and they supposedly took some of his technology and used it to manipulate people and stuff like that. Do you think any of these countries are doing weird stuff like that with energy weapons?
You've got Stockholm syndrome going on all over, and right, what they were doing down in Cuba, using synthetic telepathy and other kinds of things where you can't determine whether it's your own voice or someone else's voice is inside your head. They put it down on a certain volume level. It's kind of like an echo that you think is your own thought, and they can fool you. However, that's the purpose of meditation, so that you know what is you and what is not you. And whenever you do any drug or altered state with intent, you are, in fact, performing a form of magic. And that's going from the profane into the sacred. And when you do that, Walt Disney even knew to do that when drawing a circle around himself and saying everything inside that circle is me, and everything outside that circle is not me. And that's what you need to do when you do drugs or altered states, because you're performing an act of magic. Magic with a K is sleight of mind. Like carry in your pocket is sleight of hand.
Mm-hmm.
Sleight of hand, sleight of mind. Using the mind as a tool to go to the doors you want to open. And when you learn how to do that, it takes a lot of practice. I'm still not there. I'm growing, but it's a form of magic. Mm-hmm. And that's where you're going to find evolution. It's not going to get rid of placebo. That's done with the mind's eye. It isn't mushrooms that increase your ability in placebo. It's your belief system.
So,
well, once you start to understand that, now you realize what drugs are and what they are not. They're basically like crabgrass, a delivery system from God, how to communicate to other parts of yourself. Because it's not God you're communicating to, it's the other parts of yourself. Some of them are very wise, some of them are very stupid, some of them are very this, some of them are very that. That's two-faced. Call it. Which one?
So when you meditate, I mean, obviously you close your eyes and you sit there and it's breath work, right? And you kind of focus on your mind.
Try to quiet.
I'm always trying to figure out what the hell it is. I know sort of, but it's like it's a mystery.
Well, okay. In my system, we don't use these words, but it's called Simran and Bhajan. Simran is where you say a bunch of God names like Noho Ringi Keel, Noho Ringi Keel, boing, 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 boing.
Wow, we're going out.
You reach a certain place where you stop and you listen to the Shabbat, the sound current. And what happens next is a form called soul travel that Paul Twitchell and others talk about. You physically leave your body and you go home for a brief moment. And this is not astral projection. This is not remote viewing. And it's not the wormhole I created, which is a fourth kind of travel.
Do you do it when you sleep? Is it similar when you sleep?
What's that?
When you sleep, do you do that too? Kind of go home like a
Which kind of sleep?
just like
There you'll start with Stan
regular
Krippner.
old sleep.
Well, there's all different kinds. There's REM sleep. There's deep sleep. You know, there's Schumann's resonance and Voice of the Planet. That's what you're listening to, by the way. The Shabbat, the sound current with the Voice of the Planet. That's what I call Voice of the Planet. It's what Terence McKenna would have called 0 point energy. It's actually the Earth singing, Gaia singing at the end of the rainbow as a serpent, as a metaphor. Out of the Upanishads, Voice of the Silence. Read that. That's an interesting part of the Upanishads. Voice of the Silence. Blavatsky, Crowley, others have all done translations of that. So did, some of my most best ones out of Golden Dawn. There were several of them. I like, out of Golden Dawn, I read a lot of Dion Fortune. That is a very good place to start your magic. Reading Psychic Self-Defense, how to defend yourself from entities that are constantly encroaching. You know, Constantine and the demons that we're trying to break through, it's like that. That's in fact, I liked Hellblazer comics because of their accuracy in metaphysics. The occult. If you want to understand how demons and things work, from my understandings of them, Constantine comics, the Hellblazer comics, are pretty accurate. When the Indians would take an evil witch doctor or something and they would trap him in a tree into physical space, you can see the entity in a tree that's been trapped that's out of Borneo and some of those other places. There's some movies that you might enjoy, like The Valley, Obscured by Clouds.
I'll check it out.
Huh?
I said I'll look it up. The Valley.
Yeah, Obscured by Clouds. It's about 3 kids that go to Borneo because there's the one place on Earth that has never been mapped. It's obscured by clouds. And they think it's Shangri-La. And what happened is, on set, the woman got a hold of a pit viper while she was loaded and high on LSD and tried to touch tongues with it. And she does that in the movie, and they were afraid to stop it because they might kill her. The pit viper would bite her, and they filmed it. And that's why it's an occult classic, because of that literalness.
Is that the same? Is it the same Obscured by Clouds?
What's that?
Is it the same Obscured by Clouds that was put? The movie Obscured by Clouds. Is it the same one that was the music was done by Pink Floyd?
Yes.
That's the first thing I saw. Yeah, I saw.
Yep. Now we're back in the ball game again. And Tangerine Dream has 13 albums, and they're all primo, man. I got into electronic music when I was working with Abukla and Emu on my video feedback 1974. David Bowie, whenever he went to the United States, he always made a beeline to Seattle because I had books he couldn't find in Europe.
I love
that because of my research needed to take me into places that even the Seattle Public Library, which is an incredible library, has vaults. Didn't have what I needed.
I have seen both Pink Floyd and Tangerine Dream in concert. Tangerine Dream was awesome.
Tangerine Dream, and then there's others, a couple of others. Eberhard Weber out of Chicago at the same time that Chicago Transit Authority, he played the electric oboe jazz. And I'm a jazz man. I'm gifted. I don't hear music. I actually literally see it. And so I did, as a volunteer, I worked 20 years at the Brit, which is an outdoor in the Redwoods here down in Southern Oregon, and is possibly one of the finest music sources in the world. Their orchestra, their first violinist, 28 years. There's
Oh,
240 of them. The new conductor, oh man, young kid, he's a genius. He put 240 instruments around Crater Lake and brought in Indian chanting, and that was what he called classical music.
cool. What's this name of this orchestra?
This called no, it's the Brit, Britt, the Brit, out of Jacksonville. Look who's playing this week. Outdoor concerts. You absolutely. I remember when Get the Lead Out at the end of the show said, "Is Dr. Richard Allen Miller working as a volunteer tonight?" Why? Those 5 pieces in Get the Lead Out do a better job than Led Zeppelin, because it was Jimmy Page that took my second wife, and she left me and lived with him for 20 years because he owned Boleskine and she was a cult groupie. A long time ago, far away universe. But I have come to see music is a really nice classical music can be current. It is, there's something more in classical music. That's what makes it classical, because it communicates to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a quality in the music that is timeless.
Yeah,
That's why it's called classical,
absolutely.
as opposed to Baroque or.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I've been listening to a few things. My favorite piece that I love the most is the 1812 Overture, especially when the Washington Philharmonic, when they do the 4th of July show, because they've been playing it so many years and years in a row that they have it down pat. And then they have I don't know if it's the Army Corps of Engineers or whoever runs the cannons. They fire off the cannons in tune with the music. They are very, very close. It's hard to coordinate a bunch of gunners and a bunch of musicians to fire off at the same notes, but they do it really, really well.
Thumbs up. Double thumbs up. That's right. Your cross-modal translations of sense. It's called synesthesia, where you experience the event with different sensory motor inputs.
Mm-hmm.
You see music, you hear color.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that you see music. I can sort of play by ear, and I don't play more than a couple instruments, but I'm not very well. But when I was learning to play the bass, my music teacher and I would learn to play songs while we listened to them. We didn't have sheet music. We would, he's doing this. We'd figure them out that way. But when I went to see Tangerine Dream, it was back in the 80s when I was in high school. It's at the Kennedy Center in D.C. I stopped in Potomac, Maryland, and I got actually I was out of high school because I was old enough to buy alcohol. So I must have been 21. So I bought 3 bottles of the little airplane-sized bottles of tequila. 3 little bottles of rum,
It dropped.
a pack of Coke. And as I drove down to the theater in my MGB, I drank 2 of the bottles of rum and a bottle of rum, or 2 of the bottles of tequila and 1 of the rums, and one of all the tequila had a worm in it. It had the mezcal worm, so I ate 1 of the worms. When I got into the theater, I drank the rest of it while I was watching them, and I literally could see the music coming out of their speakers. And I don't know if it was the worm or it was the tequila or it was
all of it. It was you at that moment.
Yeah.
You should have dialogued that, because your other bodies were trying to talk to you, and that honest journaling by Ira Progoff is how you get in touch with the other parts of yourself that are the so-called not I parts of self, subconscious, ego, alternate universes, possibilities.
Yeah, I definitely accessed it because I could. It literally was like fret lines and the treble clef.
Oh, by the way, magical memory.
Yeah, well, I will never forget that experience. It was one of the best concerts I've ever seen.
You guys are fun. I wished I could mess with your brain a little more too. I've got, well, there are places that you can go that you've never been before. And you can do things there that you can't do here in normal conscious state. And what I'm going to do is suggest the 5-book series that I have, the Non-Local Mind, is tools for consciousness, like brain drivers. What you're doing, do you know what a brain driver is?
No.
You've got 40 cycle going in this here, and you got 48 cycle going in here, and you go right down into 8 cycle. It's a brain driver. It resets your brain. And those are tools that I have on my site that L. Ron Hubbard and others advocated, but realized he was only 3rd degree OTO. It was his ride along was Jack Parsons that started Jet Propulsion Laboratories, and I am going to be the physicist that didn't, knock on wood, that didn't blow himself up. I'm going to try to bring magic with this new book I'm coming out with into a proper field of study in physics. It's titled The Magical and Ritual Use of Metaphor, Archetypal Gods in Daily Living. And its presumption is there are 22 stories in the big city, and you're either possessed, which means you only have one storyboard going on, or you're complex, more than one. And you and I probably have 5 to 8 primary stories going on. Persephone, having to go to Hades each year, would be a kid taking drugs once a year because he hated Christmas. Each of these storyboards have endings. And if you don't like the ending, that's what path working is about. And what you're doing is trying to find resonance with the other parts of yourself that are slightly different and bringing them all into true as one human being. And that's what sainthood is really about. I went up, one of the studies in paranormal that I did for the military is I went, this, by the way, this hat was when I went through, this is, let's see, I'm going to get it there. Can you see?
Yeah. All others we monitor.
Navy Intelligence.
That's Navy Intelligence logo, by the way. This was in Nepal that I had to go through. It's a Nepalese meditation cap. What they do is they put sacred geometry on the top to help you meditate. I put my Navy Intel up on top, but I've had this hat for a very long time. When I went to Tibet, the Tibetan Buddhists have a technology where they have these big, long horns that they blow in communication from one valley to another, where and they blow these long horns. I photographed when they put 17 of them in a specific geometric alignment. It so compressed the air that super heavy rocks began to float on the air, and you could push them with a finger. And I documented that for the military, and that's how some of these older technologies that we don't have, they use sound, compressed sound. And there's all kinds of things. A Vermana. What is a Vermana? It's a spacecraft.
Yeah. But also, it's funny you mentioned sound, because I want to bring up something about that based on your naval intelligence. The stuff that you're talking about, the horns floating, the rocks, that's how they suspect that the rocks were floated in Egypt to build the pyramids. And it's also, they suspect how the sound from certain horns was used to break the walls of Jericho. But since you're in the Office of Naval Intelligence at some point, what can you tell me about a project that's now declassified called CERTAS? And I have a connection to CERTAS if you want to hear that after I hear what you think of the CERTAS technology. So
your question is,
have you heard of the technology known as CERTAS, and what do you know of it? And there's a connection that I have.
Okay. Not that word. Remember, I'm from the 70s, and in the 80s, I left in 83 after I created my own wormhole. I left the military and began agriculture with Chuck Walters, Acres USA. I have a 9-volume encyclopedia on alternative ag that I've written. I'm your MacGyver.
Well, CERTAS would have been around when you were in naval intelligence, and what it was
Targ and Putoff started working at SRI in '83 when I left. And I left and started agriculture in '84 and no longer current with military. MRU, Sliker died. John Stone took it over. Robert Stone, I forget his name, Stone, took it over. And now it's run by someone up out of Toronto. It doesn't make any sense. My ex-wife, Iona, was CIA counterintelligence when I was Navy intel. Imagine us as a couple.
You couldn't tell anybody, couldn't tell each other anything, really.
Hey,
in the 70s, the Navy was looking for a replacement for the SOSUS barrier, which was the sonar barrier between Greenland, Iceland, and UK, to keep any Russian subs from launching into the Atlantic without warning. So my father was a contractor for the Navy back then, and he started working on a project.
Which corporation? Huh? What corporation did he work for, sir?
He owned a corporation known as Applied Hydroacoustics Research Incorporated, out of Rockville, Maryland. His name was Jack McNicholas, the same last name as me. So he started working on this device. Honeywell devised with his help. They devised some methods to mount the engines on rubber bushings and to fill the cabins of engines with acoustic tiles that my dad had helped them to develop. So that was one part of the CERTAS system. And then also TRW developed chip systems to make the engines run more efficient. But CERTAS was a towed array sonar sensor that was towed on the back of our spy boats. And when I was about, 8 or 9, he came back from sea trials off in the Bahamas or Bermuda, one of the two. And he opens up his briefcase and he hands me a Superman. He hands me a box of rocks from Superman called kryptonite. They were just stupid rocks that were painted with glow-in-the-dark paint, and I could charge them on the light, turn them off, and they would glow. But in his briefcase, I saw a Superman patch, and I was like, well, is that mine too? And as soon as I took the Superman patch, he snatched it back and said, no, that's mine. It's top secret. And I thought to myself, how is that top secret? Everybody knows about Superman, and everybody knows who Superman really is. They know he's Clark Kent. They know he's Superman. Come to find out years later, when my grandfather gave me a book on world sea power, the T. Agos class boats we had, which are now decommissioned, by the way, I'm looking at these boats, and on the back is this big wheelhouse with a Superman patch on the side of it. So I looked at the caption, and it said CERTAS. I'm like, that's what my dad was working on. That's why I couldn't have that Superman patch, because the Navy had appropriated the Superman patch logo for this new device, which is now decommissioned and no longer top secret.
We did that in Antarctica, 1974, when I was the physicist in charge of light, trying to figure out how the light in the cavern worked. It's called bioluminescence, and it was a algae with bacteria that would eat it, and then the bacteria would glow. And it was that's where electrophoresis came from, was the study I did on that UFO fragment in the University of Chicago. They had this object that had shape to it. It was something supposed to be an artifact from a UFO. And what I did is I fired a 50 caliber cannon at it and then went down with an electron microscope to see the damage. And what happened next was that when the ordnance hit the thing, it wrapped itself down into, disshaped, and then started to flow back into its original shape. And that led to the physics of electrophoresis with memory of the structure. And structured water is the one that Jerry Pollack developed at the University of Washington when I was working under him in 1970 as a physicist in anesthesiology. I had over here, Delgado was doing chip implants in rhesus monkeys, and Dr. Moore was doing ketamine, telepathine, and BZ gas studies. And you don't even want to know what I was doing in 1974. My tenure in anesthesiology was that as a physicist, not a medical doctor. I had to do OR once a week, and it grossed me out big time. Pollack later has published his book on the things of water, and structured water is a whole chapter in my non-local minds book on what it was. It when used with fullerenes, you can, instead of putting structured water, which is H2O3, inside a carbon molecule or fullerene structure, if you put deuterium inside it, what you have now is a neutron fullerene fusion bomb that was deployed on Building 7 during the 9/11 event. It came from the Mossad. The Mossad didn't do it. 9/11 was an event that happened, and what the government did is a whole bunch of studies around that they needed to get in, which is now that bomb, that fullerene bomb, was a teleportation laser used by Lockheed, and Carnegie Mellon did the trigger mechanism. And you don't think I had spooks inside my trying to stop my writing? That's another chapter in the non-local mind, giving you the patent numbers and all of the things that on who did what on Building 7. You don't slag concrete and steel except with a plasma. That's the only thing known that will slag concrete, and it isn't jet fuel that did that. You know, Building 7 was an experiment after the fact of 9/11. I don't know much about what the Pentagon things were, except I know a bunch of papers that were needed to disappear, and that was their excuse, was an aircraft hit the Pentagon. But I could not find in my studies with that, I couldn't find the wings. So I was a little concerned.
Do you recall which side of the Pentagon was hit?
Yeah, I do, and I know what papers were destroyed.
It was the Navy side.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
CIA and Army Intel were always 10 years behind Navy. That's why they ruled the way. Navy was always the bottom line. And I have been very clear in the work I do with them on what I'll do and what I won't do. Like, I won't shoot an American. I have no reason to shoot. I don't care if he's a criminal. So it's not my job. That's not what I do.
Yeah.
Team can practice if they want to, but I don't shoot Americans. And so they made me go into Richard Nixon's office. The problem, as punishment, the problem I found with Nixon was he was extremely bright. He really was.
Yeah.
But the arrogance of somebody wanting to seek that level of power, they have to have a minimum of at least 3 screws loose. Yeah. Biden, and Trump. How about the never mind. Can you tell the women that ran, you know, the previous ones, what is it? They're all criminals.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. Yeah. I think most of them are. But your time with Nixon, did you ever get a chance to talk to him about his experiences telling his friend, the actor, God, I can't remember his name now, the guy who played in The Honeymooners?
Became what?
The main actor for The Honeymooners. Oh, To the Moon, Alice. That actor. What's his name?
Oh, The Honeymooners. That's a big fat guy. Before
Jackie Gleason. Did you get a chance to talk to Nixon about
before the Jack Parr and Jack Parr, Johnny Carson, and I loved them all, man. They humor. It isn't about Black Lives Mattering. What matters is black humor. The Black Lives was to polarize everything. It didn't bring things together. All lives matter. It has nothing to do with color. Black, white, or living color. That's Isaac Bonwitz in his book, Real Magic, before he started the Druid movement. He had a chapter called White Magic, Black Magic, and Living Color.
In living color.
What's that?
I was just saying in living color. Yeah, with the politics, I don't like Trump. I don't like Biden. I like Bernie, but I was kind of glad Bernie didn't become president, because he would have turned into a freaking murderer, bombing hospitals in Afghanistan.
Well, so the Clintons, I mean, Hillary left those people in Benghazi just on their, How could she do that? These were people that were giving their lives for America.
Yep. They all
They,
suck.
like her husband, were criminals. And I think the only true statesman, John Foster Dulles, I think the only true statesman we ever had for a president was probably Harry Truman.
Mm.
Well, in my candid opinion, I like our judicial system and the different court systems that we have, but even in Oregon, we have a serious problem now with those that cannot afford a lawyer, public defenders. We have a serious problem there now, and a lot of this is being done with intent to take control of monitoring and managing birth control, right to life, right to death, all of that kind of thing. I think individuals have that right. I don't think it should be abortions are abolished. I think a woman has a right to determine for herself from a religious or non-religious point of view. She has a right to determine what happens to her body. But these are my values. That does not mean I'm right. These are just right for me. And what made us God's favored was choice and the diversity of disagreement for personal growth.
Mm.
That's what it's all about. Where you watch other people, the reason I go to different churches is because they have values or aspire toward certain values that I aspire toward. That's called fellowship. You try to find people with similar interests, similar values, to try to help reinforce your own place toward that.
People of a like mind.
Well, that's the big thing. The big thing with Republicans, less government, but they're all up in your crap all the time. They all suck. I don't like any of them, Democrats, whatever. I try not to get involved with any
both
of it.
The Democratic and Republican parties have been infiltrated. I remember that my dad's dead now. I remember the look on his face when he realized he was no longer a Republican. He was lost.
Yeah.
And my sister,
Crazy.
it's I love the fact that we can agree to disagree, and the diversity of that is where personal growth lies.
You ever run into Hunter S. Thompson?
But yes, I did. As a matter of fact,
we got like 5 minutes.
You know who's the best one that I like? David Byrne. Is this my house burning down? David Byrne, I've met him in concert, and I'm here to tell you, some of these guys are real, besides being talented musicians, they have substance behind them.
Yeah.
Things that they're trying to witness their value by action. How is it, Batman? Again, it's not who you are, but what you do.
What you do. I met David Byrne's guitarist, Adrian Ballou, in concert down in Annapolis, and there's a picture of us, both of our bald heads looking in the camera.
By the way, your rosacea that you have,
the rosacea, yeah.
Yes, that's simply to get rid of that.
How?
What that is bacteria from the top of your head where you peel a lot, coming down and eating dead skin. And the way you get rid of it is a over-the-counter or behind-the-counter Nizoral hair wash. Nizoral is a 1%. It's over-the-counter, and behind-the-counter it's 2%. And what you do is you put that on your forehead every day, and your rosacea is gone within 2 weeks, and you'll never have it again. You've had it all your life. It's because
I'll give it a shot. The dermatologist I went to said they couldn't do anything about it. So
you can now, because basically it's a bacteria that lives on the top of your forehead, eating the dead skin, and it migrates down and causes the rosacea.
Interesting.
Those are things that I did for SEALs, like migraine headaches. I don't want someone sneezing down a dark alley because they're in a strange country and the pollen's out.
Yeah.
Well, you can't do that. You got to be able to control your allergies. Basically, allergies are an overproduction of histamines in a response to something.
Mhm.
And you can control or train the body to slow the histamines down the same way you do snake bite. You go into a light alpha state when you're first exposed, knowing you're going to have a problem. And what you do is go into a light alpha state where you no longer see images, you see geometry. You hold it there for 10 minutes, and that usually is all you need. Migraine headaches has to do with putting carbon dioxide into the blood because you're not getting enough oxygen into the brain around your smooth muscle and the trapezius and sternocleidomastoid muscles. And you can simply do that by massage and breathing, where you inhale, you hold, and then you blow out. And if you do that 3 times while lifting your head on the blowing out part, taking stress off the central nervous system, it gets rid of all migraines within 3 breaths like that. And if it doesn't work, you do another 3.
Odin is the breath. Yes.
It's all in the breath. That's correct.
Hey, yeah, and I said I've always thought Odin is the breath. You know, Odin is the breath. The Norse Odin. But hey, we got like 1 minute left. I'm looking at these books right here. It's called I want to pick these up myself. The Non-Local Mind in a Holographic Universe. Whole 5-book set. If you go to richardallenmiller.com, you can pick them up on a good price. I'm going to check them out and pick them up myself. But Richard, it's been amazing. We've loved it. We'd like to get you back too sometime in the future.
I'm available anytime you want to. I need to sell books. That's my only source of income.
Cool. I'm going to pick some up and I'll plug them more on the show for you.
Everything that comes from me is autographed.
Cool.
Dated.
Awesome.
I'm going to pick that set up, I think, when I get paid next month. But I appreciate it so much, and we hope to get you back sometime. This is one of my epic legend interviews. I've loved it. Thank you so much. Thanks for writing me on Alignable. You wrote me. That was cool. So, hey, that was great. So thanks so much, Richard. It's been great.
My pleasure.
Yep, thanks.
All right. Everybody have a good weekend. Thanks
Bye-bye.
for listening. Oh, next week we're off because it's Christina's birthday. You with Joe this week in a minute, Jay?
I'll be going on Joe's show after this. Yeah.
Tell Joe I don't have a show next Friday. It's Christina's birthday. I'm going to the drive-in in Alabama. I haven't been to a drive-in in 20 years.
That'll be fun.
How did they put it in the prisoner be seeing you?
See ya. Take care. Take care, Richard. Thanks so much. Bye. He's a trip, but
Yeah.
I like it. I like it, mad scientist. All right, just don't
Definitely had the mad
forget
scientist vibe going.
don't forget to tell Joe that.
I won't. I'll tell
No
him.
show Friday.
Yep.
All right.